Have you ever stared at the ceiling at 2 a.m., wondering why you react the way you do in certain situations? Why you're drained after a party, while someone else walks out buzzing with energy? Why some people seem laser-focused and logical, while others chase abstract ideas like butterflies on a summer day? Or maybe, just maybe, you felt like you never quite fit into any mold. If you've ever asked yourself, who am I really? You're in the right place. The truth is, most of us don't fully understand ourselves. We think we do. We know our likes, dislikes, favorite pizza toppings, but beneath all that surface-level stuff is something much deeper. Something older. Something Jungian. Carl Gustav Jung, the legendary Swiss psychiatrist and psychoanalyst, believed that each person has a type, a psychological fingerprint that shapes how they think, feel, and interact with the world. Jung didn't care about surface labels or buzzwords. He dug into the psyche like an archaeologist looking for buried treasure. And what he uncovered: four fundamental personality functions, each with its own perspective, its own rhythm, its own truth. Today, Jung's personality types are the foundation for tools like the Myers-Briggs Type Indicator and BDI, but the original theory is far more nuanced and far more personal. This isn't about putting people in boxes. This is about understanding your core wiring, so you can live a life that actually fits you, not some version of you others expect. We're going to dive deep, really deep, into each of these four Jungian types. And we'll do it in a way that speaks to you, like a late-night conversation with a friend who's not afraid to get real. So buckle up, because this is about to get personal. Type number 1, the thinker. The logic-first mind that sees the world as a puzzle. Let's start with the one who often seems like they're always 10 steps ahead. The thinker. You probably know someone like this. Or maybe you are this. The thinker isn't cold, they're calculated. There's a difference. You see, the thinking type doesn't wake up in the morning trying to feel their way through the day. They're asking, what makes sense? What's logical here? For them, emotions are secondary, not irrelevant, but not in the driver's seat either. Their life runs on analysis, principles, structure, and objectivity. If you're a thinker, you've probably been told you're too logical, too blunt, or overly rational. People might say you lack empathy, but that's not quite fair. You feel, but you don't let your feelings cloud your decisions. You want fairness, clarity, and above all, truth. Sugarcoating? Not your style. Thinkers are often misunderstood. They're the quiet ones in group settings, observing patterns while others chat about the weather. They're not antisocial. They're just mentally filtering out the noise. And when they do speak, it's usually something that slices straight to the heart of the issue. No fluff, no filler. Imagine a room filled with gears ticking quietly. Everything connects. Cause and effect. Input and output. That's the inner world of a thinking type. They thrive on structure and analysis. They love concepts, frameworks, and abstract ideas, especially when those ideas can be tested, debated, and improved. In their minds, feelings are fleeting, but systems are eternal. They want things to make sense. Whether it's solving a mathematical proof, designing a business model, or understanding the root cause of social issue, thinkers are constantly seeking intellectual clarity. This doesn't mean they're robotic. On the contrary, many thinkers are deeply passionate about knowledge, about truth, about solving problems. But their passion burns differently. It's not flashy. It's quietly relentless. Some of the most influential minds in history were thinking types. Think of Albert Einstein, whose thought experiments reshaped physics, or Marie Curie, driven not by emotion, but by an insatiable hunger for scientific truth. Even Steve Jobs, yes, known for his creativity, operated from a razor-sharp analytical core, blending logic with vision. In daily life, thinkers might show up as engineers, scientists, strategists, economists, or even chess players. But not always. They can be artists too, just the kind who obsess over the structure of their art more than the emotional expression. You might find them writing code, breaking down complex problems, or quietly rewriting the rules of the game behind the scenes. They're not loud, but they're impactful. When they move, things change. Now here's where it gets interesting. Thinkers often find relationships tricky. not because they don't care, but because feelings can seem unpredictable, even irrational. And thinkers don't do well with chaos. They might come off as distant or unemotional, especially when someone is venting or crying and they respond with a solution instead of comfort. You just need to do X and Y, they might say, thinking they're being helpful. But the other person, they just want to be heard. It's not that thinkers don't feel empathy. They just express it differently. They show love by fixing things, by helping you understand your own logic, by bringing clarity to your confusion. Their love language isn't touchy-feely. It's, I built you a spreadsheet so your life is easier. Once a thinker learns to value emotions as data, just another piece of the puzzle, they can become phenomenal partners, grounded, dependable, and able to bring calm to emotional storms. Every strength has a shadow. For the thinker, it's overanalysis and emotional detachment. They can get stuck in their heads, running loops of logic while ignoring their heart completely. They might suppress feelings for so long that they eventually erupt messily, or they might become so rigid in their logic that they lose the human side of decision-making altogether. Thinkers can also become hypercritical of themselves and others. If something doesn't make sense, or someone isn't being rational, it can trigger deep frustration. Why can't people just think? They wonder. In extreme cases, thinkers isolate. They retreat into mental towers, convinced that only logic can protect them from the messy, unpredictable world. But here's the thing. No one can live entirely in the mind. Not forever. For thinkers to grow, they need to soften, not to become emotional, but to make peace with emotion. To realize that feelings aren't the enemy of logic, they're a different kind of information. And sometimes, they're the missing piece of the puzzle. Meditation, journaling, or even therapy can help thinkers get in touch with their inner world. Not to lose their edge, but to round it out. When a thinker learns to honor both sides, the mind and the heart, they become something powerful. Not just a strategist, but a wise guide. Not just a builder of systems, but a builder of lives. Type number 2, the feeler, the heart-led soul who lives for connection. Close your eyes for a second. Picture that one person in your life who just gets people. They walk into a room and somehow know exactly who's upset, who's faking a smile, who needs a hug, or just a quiet moment. They don't talk about vibes. They are the vibe. That's the feeler. Where thinkers live in the world of logic and systems, feelers live in the warm, chaotic, deeply human world of emotion. Relationships, values, harmony, this is where they breathe, and they breathe deeply. Their antennae are always up, always tuned into the emotional frequencies around them. Some people might say feelers are too sensitive or overly emotional, but that completely misses the point. What others see as emotional fragility is often emotional wisdom. Feelers aren't weak, they're courageous. It takes guts to live with your heart exposed, to care when it hurts, to feel everything when it would be so much easier to shut it all off. Being a feeler is like walking around without skin. You feel everything, not just your own stuff, but everyone else's too. Your best friend's breakup? You're crying with them like it was your own. That awkward tension in the office after a rough meeting? You can feel it like a heavy fog in your chest. The world doesn't just exist for you, it resonates. This can be exhausting, yes, but it's also beautiful. Feelers are often the glue that holds groups together. They sense the unsaid, the in-between moments, the undercurrents. When two friends are fighting, the feeler is the peacemaker. When someone's hurting, the feeler is already by their side, no questions asked. Their empathy is instant, automatic, and deeply sincere. They don't just want to be liked, they want to understand and be understood. That's the key. Deep down, feelers crave authentic connection. Not surface-level small talk, not shallow praise. They want soul-level truth. They want to know you, and they want you to know them, too. Thinkers often lead with their head, but feelers lead with their heart. And this isn't just poetic fluff, it's powerful. Emotional intelligence is one of the most underrated superpowers in today's world. The ability to read a room, to defuse conflict, to uplift someone without saying a word. That's not softness, that's strength. The kind of strength that doesn't always get headlines, but quietly changes lives. Feelers often show up as counselors, teachers, nurses, artists, writers, or community leaders. But you'll also find them in unexpected places: corporate leaders who put people first, lawyers who fight for justice, even scientists who want to heal more than just understand. They may not always be the loudest voice in the room, but they're usually the most trusted. Why? Because people can sense that they care. And in a world full of noise, genuine care is magnetic. Here's the beautiful and brutal truth. Relationships are the feeler's greatest gift and their greatest challenge. On the one hand, no one loves like a feeler. They give everything: their time, their energy, their heart. They're the ones sending late-night check-in texts, planning meaningful surprises, remembering the smallest details. They love deeply and loyally. But on the other hand, that same depth of feeling can make them incredibly vulnerable. When you care that much, you bleed more easily. Rejection hits harder. Criticism feels personal. And when harmony breaks down in a relationship, the feeler feels like they're breaking down, too. They may struggle with boundaries, saying yes when they mean no, taking on other people's emotions like it's their job, pouring from an empty cup because they can't stand to see someone else in pain. And when they don't feel appreciated, that's the worst wound of all. A feeler who gives without being seen or valued starts to quietly disappear. First emotionally, then physically. They fade out, not because they stop caring, but because it hurts too much to care alone. The feeler's shadow isn't darkness. It's too much light with no direction. Because they care so deeply, feelers can lose themselves in other people's needs. They become chronic people pleasers, bending over backward to keep the peace, even when it means betraying their own values or needs. They avoid conflict, not because they're afraid, but because conflict hurts. It disrupts their inner sense of harmony. They might suppress their own anger, their own desires, just to keep everyone else happy. But eventually, that bottled up emotion comes out. Sometimes as tears, sometimes as explosive outbursts, sometimes as a slow, silent withdrawal from everything they once loved. Feelers are also prone to burnout. Emotional labor isn't free, and when you're constantly absorbing others' pain without processing your own, it adds up. Fast. One day you're the emotional rock for everyone, and the next you're curled up in bed, unable to move, wondering where the you in all this went. So how does a feeler grow? By realizing that their sensitivity is not a weakness, it's a compass. But like any compass, it needs direction. Feelers thrive when they learn to set boundaries, speak their truth, and prioritize their own emotional health. It starts with small shifts: saying no without guilt, asking for what they need, letting others own their emotions instead of taking them on, choosing authenticity over approval. Feelers also benefit from grounding practices: journaling, time alone, being in nature, creative expression. Anything that reconnects them to their own emotions, not just everyone else's. And when they embrace their full selves, both the empathy and the fire, the heart and the spine, they become unstoppable. Not just kind, but courageous. Not just nurturing, but powerful. They become the kind of person the world desperately needs right now. Type number 3, the censor, the realist who trusts what's right in front of them. Picture this. You're at a group brainstorming session. Everyone's tossing around wild, abstract ideas about what could be or what might happen in 5 years. But there's that one person who pauses, looks around, and says, "Okay, but what do we actually need to do today?" That's the censor. In a world where so many people get caught up in theories, fantasies, or mental gymnastics, censors are firmly rooted in the now. The present moment is their home. They don't want to float away in hypotheticals. They want facts, clarity, tangible experience. They trust what they can see, touch, taste, and hear. If it's not real, it doesn't hold much weight. Some people might call them practical, realistic, even simple, but that completely undersells the power of a censor. These people are doers, grounded, observant, sharp. They notice what others miss, the details, the textures of the world, the things that are actually happening. While others are stuck overthinking, the sensor is already halfway done fixing the thing. To a sensor, the world isn't some abstract mental map. It's alive, vibrant, physical. They have a natural connection to the environment around them, and that gives them a kind of presence that's almost magnetic. They notice the chipped paint on the windowsill, the way someone's voice changes when they're lying, the shift in temperature before a storm rolls in. It's not magic, it's attention. And that attention to detail makes sensors incredibly effective, especially in the real world. You won't often find a sensor lost in theory or spending hours navel-gazing about the meaning of life. Not because they're shallow, far from it, but because they believe life is meant to be lived, not just analyzed. They appreciate the simple pleasures. A well-cooked meal, a walk in nature, the feeling of fresh sheets, the rhythm of a familiar routine. They're often grounded in tradition, not because they resist change, but because they find meaning in what works. Sensors are often the backbone of any team or community. They're the ones who actually get things done. When someone needs a problem fixed, a plan executed, or a situation stabilized, they call the sensor. You'll find them in roles where precision and reliability matter. Nurses, mechanics, chefs, firefighters, police officers, tradespeople, managers, pilots. People who need to be in the moment and on point. But don't assume they can't be creative. Many sensors are deeply artistic. They just express creativity in a concrete way. A sculptor shaping raw material. A dancer mastering the physicality of movement. A photographer capturing exactly the right light. They don't just think about ideas. They make them real. Sensors show their love in practical ways. They're the ones who remember your favorite snack and leave it on your desk. Who fix your sink before you even realize it's leaking. Who quietly, consistently show up. They might not write long love letters or dive into deep emotional analysis, but their love is felt. It's in their presence, their consistency, their acts of service. If a feeler says, "I love you," a sensor shows it by changing your oil, carrying the groceries, and warming up the car on a cold morning. They value stability in relationships. Drama? Not their thing. They'd rather deal with things calmly, directly, and efficiently. If there's a problem, their first instinct is usually, "Okay, what can we do to fix it?" But that same groundedness can sometimes make them seem emotionally unavailable, especially to people who crave lots of verbal affirmation or abstract emotional conversation. They may struggle with expressing deeper feelings, not because they don't have them, but because they're wired to focus on what's here and now, not what's unspoken. Every type has its challenge. For sensors, it's their deep attachment to what's real and familiar. Because they trust the known world so much, they can become stuck in routines, resistant to new ideas, or overly skeptical of things that don't have immediate proof. They might say, "That's not how we've always done it," or "I'll believe it when I see it," which, while practical, can sometimes hold them back from growth. They may dismiss intuition or imagination as fluff or nonsense, missing out on the deeper insights those tools can offer. They can also become too focused on details, losing sight of the big picture. The sensor's world can shrink down to what's right in front of them, which is safe, yes, but not always expansive. And if life starts to feel out of control, they may cling to structure or routine even tighter, avoiding change, innovation, or emotional complexity just to feel stable. For sensors to grow, they don't have to give up their connection to the real world. They just have to expand it. It starts with openness, trying new things, allowing space for intuition, imagination, and emotion, even when they can't be measured or explained. Learning that not everything valuable is tangible, that some truths are felt, not seen. Mindfulness practices can be incredibly powerful for sensors, not as a trend, but as a way to deepen their presence even more, to not just see the world, but feel its deeper layers. And when a sensor opens up to new possibilities while still staying grounded in reality, they become unstoppable. The perfect bridge between what is and what could be. A grounded realist who's not afraid to reach beyond the horizon. Type number 4, the intuitive, the dreamer who sees what others don't. Let's be honest, if the world were only made up of sensors and thinkers, we'd have perfectly organized cities and a lot of working machinery, but probably no poetry, no iPhones, no revolutions. No, what if? Conversations at 2 a.m. That's where the intuitive comes in. The intuitive doesn't just see the world for what it is, they see what it could be. They're visionaries, inventors, storytellers, problem solvers who connect dots nobody else even sees. While a sensor looks at the surface of reality, the intuitive stares straight into the layers underneath it. They ask the weird questions, the uncomfortable ones, the big, bold, beautiful ones. Why are things this way? What if we did it completely differently? What's coming next? Where the sensor lives in the present moment, the intuitive is forever chasing the future, or better yet, creating it. Imagine living in a mental landscape where ideas spark like lightning, where one random thought leads to five others, each more abstract and fascinating than the last. That's the intuitive's daily reality. They're not always here. Their body might be at the dinner table, but their mind is in 1,000 other places. And not in a distracted, careless way, but in an expansive, searching way. They're scanning the horizon, mentally leaping into scenarios that haven't happened yet, exploring patterns, archetypes, metaphors, future trends. To some people, this feels like magic. To the intuitive, it's just Tuesday. And while this inner world is full of imagination and meaning, it can be exhausting, too. Not everyone speaks their language. Their ideas might seem too much, too weird, or not realistic. So they learn to hide, to edit, to pretend they're less dreamy, less intense, less themselves. That's the tragedy of many intuitives. They feel different and sometimes deeply alone in their minds. If there's a world-changing idea on the table, chances are an intuitive was involved somewhere along the way. They live for innovation, whether that's reimagining a broken system, writing a novel that cracks your soul open, or launching a startup no one saw coming. They don't just think outside the box. They forgot there was a box to begin with. Intuitives thrive in environments that allow them to explore, stretch, and question. You'll find them in philosophy circles, design labs, tech companies, R&D teams, art collectives, spiritual retreats, or even just alone in a room with a notebook and a billion thoughts. Their gift is depth. They don't skim life. They dive deep into meaning, symbolism, psychology, metaphysics, the big why behind it all. They want to understand not just how something works, but what it means. And then they want to build something new with that understanding. When it comes to relationships, intuitives aren't looking for just anyone. They're looking for kindred spirits. They crave conversation that goes beneath the surface. If they can't talk about dreams, death, love, the future, the purpose of everything, they get bored. Fast. They're drawn to people who stimulate their mind and challenge their ideas, who see them, not just the quirks or the intellect, but the whole swirling inner universe they carry. But here's the twist. Intuitives can be surprisingly private. Because their minds are always buzzing, they often need space. Alone time, room to wander and integrate what they're sensing. Too much reality can feel draining, especially if it's repetitive, predictable, or emotionally shallow. They're not cold. They're just processing 10 layers of meaning before they even open their mouth. In love, when they do connect, it's profound, soul deep. Their loyalty is less about routine, more about resonance. They'll stand by you through storm after storm, so long as they feel that soul spark is still there. The gift of intuition is also its curse. Because they live in possibility, intuitives can struggle with reality. They may chase ideas, but never finish them. Jump from project to project, always excited about the next big thing, but bored with the here and now. They can get so wrapped up in inner meaning that they lose touch with the outer world. Laundry piles up. Deadlines get missed. Their room might look like a tornado blew through it, but they've got a 20-page manifesto about the philosophy of time sitting on their desk. So, priorities. They may also struggle with existential weight. Always asking why sounds poetic, until it starts leading to questions like, does anything even matter? Intuitives are prone to depression, anxiety, or spirals of doubt, especially when they feel like no one else understands the world the way they do. And when that disconnect gets too strong, they may escape into books, into their phone, into work, into fantasy, into anything but the dullness of the everyday. For the intuitive, growth is about grounding, not giving up their dreams, but anchoring them in real, tangible action. It's about realizing that not every thought needs to be followed, that ideas are beautiful, but execution is where transformation happens. That it's okay to be here, even if here isn't perfect. Structure is their unlikely ally. Routines, habits, deadlines, not to suffocate creativity, but to give it a container. Like a riverbed holds the rushing water. It's also about connection, allowing others in, learning that being weird is often just being ahead of your time. That people might not get you right away, but the right ones will. And when they do, magic happens. When the intuitive learns to stay present, take action, and trust their instincts while staying open to feedback, they become visionaries who actually change the world. Not just in theory, but for real. And that's it. Carl Jung's 4 personality types brought to life: the thinker, the feeler, the sensor, the intuitive. Each one carries its own genius, its own pitfalls, its own kind of wisdom. And chances are, you saw a bit of yourself in all of them. That's no accident. Because the truth is, we're not just one thing. We're layered, complex, evolving. And Jung didn't create these types to put people in boxes. He created them to help us understand ourselves, to notice our patterns, to grow. So maybe now, as you walk through the world, you'll see people a little differently. The quiet thinker behind the screen, the feeler holding it all together, the grounded doer fixing what's broken, the dreamer lost in the clouds but holding lightning in their hands. They're all out there. Maybe you're one of them. Maybe you're all of them. Either way, now you know, and that's the beginning of everything.